This is my favourite definition test because you've got some lovely detail on the buildings, and it's got nice wide peripheral view into the distance, so you can see how good the lens is. Way down there to my right, down looking towards the harbour. Here's my other favourite definition shot, but this time at a greater distance. Some good detail on these cottages opposite and nice colour. Good to see what the detail is like on the windows. We're quite stationary at the moment, and then with a bit of movement around. Quite stationary at the moment. And then with a bit of movement. And these are all at 1080, 60 frames a second with the gyro turned on. Right, and now these clips are at 1080, 60, gyro on, 16:9, with the lens hood on. And there's some good detail here, and in the distance you can see the harbour. And there's some good detail on the brickwork, which I think shows the sharpness from left-hand edge of the frame to the right-hand edge of the frame. And I always see how well I can read the lettering on the shop signs. And here's the same clip, 1080, 60, the gyro is turned on. The audio is from the camera, of course. And there's some noisy motorbikes going across around the harbour. Right, this is the same shot at 1080, 60. EIS, that's gyro stabilisation, is on, and it seems to work on 4K as well, which is unusual. So as you swing around here, you can see the harbour, and there's good detail on the shop signs here. Right, this is another good test shot because you've got some good detail here on the windows, on the cottages, and the rigging on the boat. This is Brixham Harbour, and as you can see, it's not far off low water. This is my favourite definition test because you've got some lovely detail on the buildings, and it's got nice wide peripheral view into the distance, so you can see how good the lens is. Way down there to my right, down looking towards the harbour. This is my other favourite definition shot, but this time at a greater distance. Some good detail on these cottages opposite and nice colour. Good to see what the detail is like on the windows. We're quite stationary at the moment, and then with a bit of movement around. Quite stationary at the moment. And then with a bit of movement. Right, my regular old test shots, 1080, 60 with the gyro on and default settings, apart from I've got metering it on average as opposed to centre. But there is some nice detail here, and then off into the distance, down to the harbour, and on the brickwork here and the shop signs. I'll probably do a bit of a zoom in to see how clear the lettering is on the signs. Right, here's one of my other regular test shots, 1080, 60, gyro on. But there's some good detail here on the cottages. If you look at the window frames. And round and into the sun, because we're getting into winter now. The rigging on the yachts is also good to see what the definition's like. And the windows on the harbour office over there. Right, this is the first of my test shots. This is at 1080-60 with the EIS, that's gyro stabilization, on. There's no screen, but it's a 160-degree wide angle lens, so hopefully I shall get something here. That's down into the harbour, and it's winter now, so very low sun. This is audio from the camera, of course. It's very low sun, so a lot of this is in shadow, but gives you some idea of the image quality and the sharpness. And I find it interesting to zoom in on the shop signs. Right, well, this is still at 1080-60, gyro stabilization on. I'd point out too that default settings are super fine in the sharpness settings, and I've put everything down to normal. But there's some good detail here on the cottages, on the windows, and they are in some sunshine. And the rigging on the boats is a good indication of the sharpness as well. This is my favourite definition test because you've got some lovely detail on the buildings, and it's got nice wide peripheral view into the distance, so you can see how good the lens is way down there to my right, down looking towards the harbour. My other favourite definition shot, but this time at a greater distance. Some good detail on these cottages opposite, nice colour. Good to see what the detail is like on the windows. Quite stationary at the moment, and then with a bit of movement around. Quite stationary at the moment. And then with a bit of movement. Right, this is quite a good test shot. You've got some good detail on the brickwork here, and as you swing around you're looking down into the harbour, so you've got distance, and then up in the shade there, the brickwork detail. Another view of the harbour and some good detail on the cottages over the other side. Gives you a chance to see the field of view of all of these. All of these clips are at 1080-60 with the gyro on and set at high, because you can actually set high or low sensitivity on the gyro. So this is one of my favourite test shots because there's lots of detail here. And also round to the right you've got some quite good distance. Right, so this is the same shot from the same point of view, but on the middle setting. And the other favourite definition test, again SJ7 star, 1080-60, gyro on, and this is probably one of the most expensive cameras apart from the Xiaomi's, but it's also touchscreen. And the other favourite definition test, again SJ7 star, 1080-60, gyro on, and there's some good definition here on the windows, the rigging on the boats. Quite a good test of a camera, I think, and the colours on the cottages. This is at 1080-60 with the gyro on and the wide setting. Some nice detail here on the brickwork, and when you pan around there's some distance there to see the sharpness, and then we've got some nice detail here on the brickwork and the shop signs. Like one of my favourite test shots here, 1080-60 gyro on, and there's some lovely detail on these cottages here, and on the rigging on the boats. Okay, right, my usual favourite test shots. You probably wonder why I use the same shots. It's so that people can actually look at different videos and compare the sharpness and the colours and so on. So some fairly low winter sun here, some nice detail here. As you pan round you can see down the harbour, and there's some lovely detail on the brickwork on this Victorian building and on the shop signs and so on. And these first few clips are at 4K, and the EIS, that's gyro stabilisation, is on. Right, still in 4K. As I mentioned, EIS, that's gyro stabilisation, is on, and there aren't many cameras that actually have EIS in 4K. And the sun has just poked its head out. And again, there's some lovely detail on the cottages here, particularly on the windows and on the rigging on these boats. Let's try this round into the low winter sun. Here's one of my favourite test clips. All of the clips, unless otherwise stated, are at 1080-60 plus default settings. This one's got some nice detail on the painting and the brickwork, and as you pan round you've got some good stuff in the distance down there towards the harbour, and some lovely detail on the brickwork here. And this is my other favourite test shot. This is at default settings, apart from the fact it's 1080-60, and I tend to put metering on average as opposed to spot. So there's some good detail here on the buildings, the windows, good colour, and on the rigging on the boats. Also gives a chance to see the detail on the rigging. Oh, I just said that. Right, this is 1080-60 with the gyro turned off. Right, this is the Xiaomi Mijia Mini at 1080-60 with the gyro on and default settings everywhere else. There's some good detail here, some good detail on the brickwork too, and down into the harbour in the distance, but unfortunately the sun is low and it's late in the day, so the brickwork here is not in sunlight. But it's interesting to see how well you can read the shop signs. Right, this is 1080-60 frames a second. And the sun is round now on these cottages on this side, so you can look at the detail on the windows here. In fact, nice low light. And a few fishing boats in. This is Brixham Harbour, by the way. And people ask me, Brixham Harbour in Devon in the UK, with lots of gulls. And one of my usual test shots, because there's some nice detail here on the hairdressers, the pirate painting, and you've got some good distance down there into the harbour, and again on the brickwork and shop signs, which are in shade now. Oh, and the scaffolding, and these are 1080-60. Again, I'll zoom in on the shop signs. (1080-60), gyros on, and default settings. Incidentally, the default setting for sharpness is high in the Mini and normal in the YI, so possibly the YI2 could be sharper with a different setting, but I'm using default settings. in the interests of fairness.